Alright, hello and welcome back to another 40k lore video. There's going to be no crazy speculation this time. I'm just going to be giving you the basic record of events of what happened during the Charadon Campaign. Now, what wanted me to do this one is, first of all, it has to do with Nurgle. You guys know I love Nurgle. Second thing is, I wanted to find a lore video on it on YouTube myself, and I found one dude who did a video on the first eighth of the campaign, and then just never did a part two. So I'm just gonna be covering the entire campaign right now in this video. Like I said, no speculation. My sources are going to be the Lexiconum, just the 40k Lexiconum. 40k Wiki doesn't have anything, and I'm not sure if there's any other lore sites I should be visiting. But if there is, please leave them in the comments if you know. But regardless, let's get into it. So, like I said, this is going to be an overall reading of the Charadon Campaign. Yeah, try to keep it away from my my usual insane gibberish, and I'll try to spice it up. As my sole source, like I said, is the Lexiconum, despite the name. The Charadons were not present in the battle, like I was just fumbling there. The Charadon Campaign was an effort by Typhus, which is Nurgle's seemingly most useful follower, to put something called the Nemesis Worm into the Forge World Metallica. Hey, remember that guy place? Remember that place when I was talking about the Sons of Medusa? But regardless, I'm just going to go through the lore. First, let's take a look at the forces of each side. And for the Imperial forces, it's going to be a pretty diverse group. It's not going to be just one or two forces. We're going to look at a lot of people here. So like I said, there's going to be the Metallica Corps Reserve, some expeditionary forces. So there's Skitarii, Admech, stuff like that. Scattered flotillas and that. There's going to be reinforcements from a planet named Deimos. Nothing too crazy. Let's be real, no one's here to talk about the Mechanicus. It's mostly going to be the Space Marines people are looking here for. So there were strike forces from the Ultramarines. Surprisingly, Daddy GW didn't just give them the win on this one, but the Blueberries did only have a few strike forces, like I said. Along with the White Scars, and hey, look, the Sons of Medusa are here. Also, they were other strike forces, but they were mostly just random successor chapters, shit like that. And there's nothing too crazy, so let's just list those off. It's going to be the Coruscators, the Brazen Drakes, the Raven Guard, the Grey Knights, the Iron Knights, and the Obsidian Jaguars. So those are going to be forces in here as well. However, there is a little-known chapter that I had deployed so many forces that I'm going to list off the forces. So it's the Excruciators, which deployed a total of 373 Battle Brothers, 94 armored vehicles, nondescript, a battle barge, 2 strike cruisers, 4 sword-class frigates. No clue what the Excruciators owed to the Admech, but they sent a lot of forces. That's almost 40% of the chapter. That's almost half the chapter. But, yeah. Since they put forward so many forces, you'd think they'd have lore, but I checked the Lexiconum and the Wiki, and they only are known for... they're only known for being in the Charadon Campaign, and that they torture people for the Ecclesiarchy. That's like all of their lore right there. So we're gonna have to homebrew some stuff for them one of these days. Outside of that, it's just a mix of Guard, Sisters of Battle, Imperial Knights, which I'll name. And I'll be naming these guys off. It's not like I'm just going to say, oh yeah, the Guard, da-da-da, and then just you assume it's Cadians. No, I'm going to be, I'll talk about, if they get their special mention, I'll mention them. Don't worry. But outside of that, it's just, a mix of everything. And for the Death Guard force, it's going to be Typhus, who brought 5 plague companies, along with 99% of the Chaos Navy. It's crazy. There's some other big names, such as Theraxoplosmox. It's all one word, by the way. And then Rodigus, Rodigus, you know that guy. Bringing up, they also had a few more ships, some tanks, and 5 more plague companies. So it's about an entire chapter. If plague companies are the same as Astartes companies, but. Past that, there's small forces from a bunch of other legions and warbands, mostly just namesake forces to say that they had their, we were there when it happened. There's a Black Legion was there, Word Bearers, Night Lords, Iron Warriors, and even the Alpha Legion was there. It's kind of impressive, not gonna lie. And of course, some Chaos Knights, Titans, and Demons, because what wouldn't be, What? Why wouldn't there be? There's also 4 warbands that were mentioned here and never again. So I'm gonna mention them just so they get their piece of the pie, like everyone else. It's gonna be the Beasts of Annihilation, the Hellhawks, the Cleaved, and the Thrice Warped. Along with that, the Lexiconum did also mention that there were Orcs, Drukhari, and Gene Stealers in the area, but I can only assume that these forces just happened to be in the area and didn't actually, didn't actually have anything important to do with the plot. Alright, with naming names and tallying forces out of the way, let's get into the real real meat and potatoes of the campaign. And I just want to cover some ground stuff real quick. First of all, there's going to be a lot of names. I know I just said I'm done naming names, but there's a lot of locations and a lot of planets, alright? And the only maps I can find are blurry as all get out, alright? So, there's going to be a map in the corner. Just know it's not going to be legible. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not going to be legible. Even if it took up the whole screen, it's so blurry. But anyways, so first of all, I would like to apologize for what I said about 30 seconds ago. So it turns out the Dark Eldar were actually very important in the beginning. So Typhus began his attack in the Cromid system, Wallace and Cromid. Just changing the strip there for a second, I misspelled something. It happens, it happens. And in this Cromid system, it was a vital link between 2 subsectors that were, very important for logistical supply lines and all that. I'm sure Gilliman approved. But despite almost no warning to the offensive, there were some warnings. The warp was doing demon things, but there was no warning to what exactly was going to happen. However, Imperial forces were already dug in like in Catachan Tick, due to Lilith Hasprax of all people raiding the area. And that Tharaxoplasmox guy, I'm just going to call him Tharax. So Tharax, from earlier, managed to earn a decisive victory by landing on Okarium, landing on Okarium aside some Dark Eldar, forcing the Savlari forces to retreat, only be torn apart by their own gun servitors, as the Drukhari killed all the messengers who were sent to, stop that specific thing from happening. Crazy. Unfortunate. But this wasn't the only offensive. Granted, it was a tri-pronged assault with their planets such as Dyrox Reach being preyed upon by the Company Malevolent, which is a group of Chaos Knights, which, as you can imagine, was Knights versus Planetary Militia. It wasn't much of a fight, so we're not going to talk much about that. And there was also a small battle on the Battle of Attrition on the Agra world of Torthusa. There's going to be a lot of me saying words slowly in this one, alright? But Torthusa, where the Death Guard obviously won, because it's a war of attrition. Come on, guys. The next in-depth battle for us to actually talk about, though, is in the Alamac system. I'm just assuming this is like a north. They're going to the Galactic South, but I'm assuming. In the Alamac system, where the 727th Cadian Army repelled cultists and scouting parties, along with trapping several Titans on a mining planet in the system, which is incredible for the cannon fodder of the Imperium to achieve. However, even with these significant victories, there were losses of Light Lord Terminators, and the general side effects of just interacting with Nurgle began to show up. Despite this, there was one place that was still firmly in Imperial control called St. Bartolph's Throne. Now remember this is a very important place. Instead of losing more soldiers, the Death Guard General, Ophlosmus Bilge, we're just going to call him Bilge, just captured a Skitarii eradication arc and just crashed it into the fucking city. Just simple tactics. So yeah, Bilge and Tharax, those are going to be our 2 guys, remember those. And remember I mentioned that I thought the Orcs were insignificant. Well, it turns out the Orcs are actually the good guys, as the Freebooters, led by Captain Skullbuster, went toe-to-toe with Bilge, causing enough trouble for the remaining Cadians to escape to his secret space station, which, despite, winning the battles and, escaping with your life, the enemy, the war was still shifting towards... And with reinforcements on top with all these victories, the war was shifting towards Typhus and his merry band. And on top of that, for Typhus's official introduction into the war, he had a massive fleet, obviously, with Lord Zed of the Black Legion was there too, but he's mostly just a background character. I'm gonna be real with you. However, he did spend the first few days just wiping out any defense fleets in the Duralim system. He was like a vanguard or something, I'm assuming. Like I said, the map's ass. But yeah, he was just took out any defense fleets, as he had like fucking 80 battle barges or something stupid. I didn't write that number down. Before turning his attention to the planets himself, which he let loose a conjoined triad of Nurgle demon princes named the Sistlings, who unleashed literal zombies, not poxwalkers. Not sure if there's a difference, but he unleashed zombies on a number of high cities, which, needless to say, the planets were decisively taken. Along with a few forces remaining in the tallest spires of many cities, living entirely by the grace of the Emperor and the swiftness of Valkyrie supply runs, right? While the organics were suffering, the Skitarii weren't doing much better either, with another eradication arc being crashed onto Magnifera, allowing Black Legion and Death Guard forces to land en masse upon the planet with only light resistance. With the Vanguard group of systems out of the way, was on to Metallica proper, and here's where we get to start seeing the logistics of the war start to come through, as we were mostly just focusing on the Death Guard aura farming. There you go. And what I did fail to mention is that the man behind the commands to hold all these planets, his name is Clang, right? Something like that. And he had come to the realization that this just wasn't some roving band of Chaos Marauders, this was an actual invasion. And he kind of didn't have the support set up for these Vanguard systems. So he made an overall call to retreat back to a series of systems known as the Metallican Gates, which I don't entirely disagree with. I'm going to be completely honest with you. This is overall a smart move, you can't hold this ground you have, so just fall back to these much more defended systems, right? However, apparently I'm the only person that saw this, right? Hold on. I was remembering what I wrote in the script. I got it. Yep. As supply lines were, obviously, it took them a while to realize the true scale. There was probably already people being, they were already losing planets pretty decisively. They needed to fall back sooner, I personally think. However, apparently no one else thought this. This simple withdrawal order became known as the Clang Betrayal, and a number of unnamed guardsmen, sisters of battle forces, and space marines were butchered on Dyrock's Reach in Torthusa, with some forces consolidating on a death world named Sabira, and actually managing to repel several heretic warbots, which is pretty good for them. Now, at the Metallican Gates, we get our first look at the famed Excruciators. These lads led several counterattacks into the Duralim system, reinforcing tattered Vestroyan forces and taking out demonic artillery encampments. Just standard Space Marine stuff. Other than the Space Marines, there is also, other than our Excruciators, they're going to be the Ultramarines and the Raven Guard, and some other unnamed strike forces were deployed to combat demon engines on the agri-world of Sustus. Despite these counteroffensives buying time for the Metallican Gates to be further secured, Typhus still pushed forward, securing Magniferia and Oblek. To round off his personal contributions, he unleashed Rodicus into the Feyor and Brezentia system, a whole 2/3 of the... I'm struggling, Chief. I'm struggling. But yeah, onto the Feyor and Brezentia systems, which is a whole 2/3 of Metallican Gates, and completely bypassing the Metallican fleets overhead, as Rodicus is a demon. He could just teleport there. But in the Feyor system, Rodicus himself did make the appearance on the ocean planet of Fathom, summoning oily rain to turn the oceans into a thick sludge, with diseases springing forth from it, obviously, because it's Nurgle. And maybe that's why they call him the Rainfather. Anyways, the final nail in the coffin for Fathom was the gaping maw that he formed at the bottom of the ocean, or bottom of its northern ocean, spilling forward many demons of Nurgle. which, despite the utter mayhem in the Phaeor system, Byzantius was managing itself fairly well, actually. No doubt because of the Iron Skulls, which were the Titan legions there, and the Rodior system, the final Metallic Gate, was completely untouched. So this is where the battle starts to get shaken up, because we've been seeing Typhus advance and advance and advance. He's going to finally start losing here, as the Deimos planetary reinforcements, which are also Scutari, showed up, along with the strike cruiser full of Grey Knights who are killing any demons and anyone who even witnessed a demon. Which, I'm just going to be honest, me personally, I would wait until after the war to start killing my own soldiers, personally. Kind of need them at the moment. But with these reinforcements arriving, a portion of Battlefleet Metallica did push forward into a counterattack, which forced Bilge to retreat from the Phaeor system and to be caught in a crossfire between the Scutari and the forces of the Orcs coming back, where Bilge would meet his end. Meanwhile, in the Durlum system, Typhus and Lord Zed would be caught wildly out of position and abandoned by their Word Bearers and Alpha Legion comrades, who literally just weren't mentioned at all until now, so I guess they were just also there. But basically an entire house of knights were dropped on their head. This is going to be the House Raven. They're going to be important later on. This led the liberation... This led to the liberation of Alexistor, and the siege of Resplendus was broken by a mix of Vostroyan and the aforementioned Excruciator forces mentioned earlier. To add insult to injury, the chapter master of the Excruciators killed the Sistlings, so Typhus was also down 3 demon princes. The next significant victory saw the recapture of the Griffonica spaceport and many surrounding bastions, and the final Imperial victory came with the Sustus being brought back into the Imperial fold by the Titan Legion, what were these guys called again? The Iron Skulls. Also allegedly killing Lord Zed of the Black Legion. Like I said, he was just gone like that. So with all this happening, with relatively quick succession, granted this is 40k, it probably took like 100 fucking years. I didn't bother checking timestamps. Probably should have though. Typhus opts to just fall back to the Alumax system, and consolidate his forces and allegedly the final step of his campaign. Now here's just going to be a random filler episode of a paragraph, but what happened was, so the Alpha Legion and Word Bearers did fuck off, and they did it to join a cult. I'm not kidding. They left the Charadon Campaign to join forces and rename to the Disciples, and started several cult uprisings on the planet of Daku, alongside the Cyclos and Embor systems. And these were successful, except for the Daku system, where the cult uprising was not actually of chaos, but of gene stealers, named the Cult of the Inner Worm. A lot of cults in this paragraph. In this fight, nothing much happened, other than, Daku was in fact taken, and a Keeper of Secrets was summoned named... we're going to call that one the Sinuous. Along with a Gene Stealer Patriarch being captured for unknown reasons. This is by far the messiest family dynamic ever. Alright, so through this warp rift that is going to be named the Soar. I didn't make up that name. That is the name that was given in the universe, guys. But Typhus did arrive rather swiftly, despite his 5-inch movement speed. So he took the hive planet of Munis Ferrum, after turning all of the servitors against their creators, which is honestly just aura right there. That's kind of cool. And the Dark Mechanicum did make their first appearance. Very fascinating, very interesting. Next, the mining world of Planetas and the fortress moon of Ferrovigilum. God, I hate these names, bro. I'm going to be honest with you. With both being bathed in battle, Planetas seeing human wave tactics and with the Pharaoh planet thing being the battleground for knights and titans alike. While these battles fought on, Typhus personally took Solari Anchorage, murdering the few soldiers left at this. It was kind of like a port, like a spaceport, like a depot, a refueling station, if you will. But basically, he took that personally, and that kind of left any soldiers on these planets to kind of defend for themselves so deep into Imperial territory. So next up is the remaining forces supplemented by the Sons of Medusa, held their ground until reinforcements could arrive, which you're going to find is a common theme here. The fighting was so vast and so bloody that Khornate demons were naturally drawn to the battery world of Omex Magnifica, which is crazy because there was no fighting on this going. There was no fighting going on that planet until they showed up. They just went to the one peaceful planet in the system, bro. But anyways, as I was saying, as if things couldn't get any worse for the Imperium, on Planetus, Chaos supply lines were severed. Hold on. Oh yeah, on Planetos. Sorry, those were two separate sentences. I was talking too fast, but yeah. Yeah, Battery World was taken, so that's going to be power supply cut to the Imperium, batteries and all that. But on Planetos, Chaos supply lines were severed, and it seemed that the planet could be held. However, there was a new problem arising, as Metallica still had seen little actions on its surface from the orbital batteries, punished any plague fleets that got too close. However, Typhus and his Blightlord Terminators somehow boarded the station and performed a ritual that unleashed data demons, turning the orbital cannons on Metallica itself. You can imagine how that is a problem, because now Metallica is undefended from its orbital stations, and now it's left to fend for itself. So before Typhus officially pushed on to his final prize, being Metallica, the Forest World, the surrounding planets in the system were still developing as their own battlegrounds, with the planet of Munisferum being virus bombed and plagued by data demons, even turning the local Skitarii forces against them, as more Jack Mechanicum forces got involved, which I personally enjoy, as this is quite an overshadowed faction in the 40k, the model range and all that. But there were plenty of fighting mentioned on the planet and unsuccessful rescue attempts on an unnamed Archmagos, and fighting against other cities were also being fought with human wave tactics, with two named Sisters of Battle orders, being the Order of Our Martyred Lady and the Order of the Sacred Rose, who were saved by literal space cowboys named Cerberus Raiders. The other planets were focused on less, with Chaos Knights and Titans on the Pharaoh planet, earning a hard-fought victory against the Imperial Titans. That's the word I'm looking for. Remember that the Battery World, Omex Magnifica? Well, apparently that one just got a shit ton of lore, as the fighting was still there too, as more war bands showed up, named the Punishers and the Unhallowed. Never to be mentioned again. That's just that they're there. I'm going to be real with you. Sometimes 40k is just like that. But they did cripple energy production, being combated by the Tempestus Scions, along with the Tempestus Scions successfully third-partying a fight between Nurgle-aligned Poison Chalice and an unnamed band of Khornate cultists, which left both Chaos forces defeated, but at the cost of a corpse starts processing plant that the Chaos forces were fighting over. But Chaos is messy like that, and even Typhus's greatness can't keep everybody in line. This costly infrastructure loss did mean that rations were cut, sparking labor uprisings. Big fucking shocker. And despite the military victories of the Imperium, the forces of the Chaos were too great, and the losses to infrastructure was only slowly suffocating the Metallica system. Furthermore, the warp disturbances caused by the giant mouth in the sky, as you can imagine, and several portals to literal hell being opened on these planets, caused warp travel in the system to be even more unreliable than it is, meaning reinforcements were further cut to the system itself. With all of this in his favor, Typhus further weakened the Imperium with all of the bitter fighting on his planets, distracting forces from Forge World itself, Metallica. Not to mention the planets saw heavy fighting were not only the planets that saw all the heavy fighting were affected, sorry about that, as the miasmic malignifiers and their storms caused catastrophes in the relatively safe Abolus subsector. But these, weren't focused on as much. But the miasmic storms did also work both ways, as it infected the machines and vehicles of the Iron Warriors on Okarium, which, if you can remember that fucking place, which led to an Astromilitarum victory on the planet due to the Deimos reinforcements, if you can remember those fucking guys, as they continued their march against the Chromid system towards Torthuza, if you can remember that fucking place. Yeah, there's a lot of back and forth in the systems. It's very messy there. But here's for the far reach at the beginning of the video. The planet of Daku has entered the plot again, as another dark ritual began taking place there. It's crazy. Alright, so the next major target of the Charadon Campaign was Colossi, which is the homeworld of House Raven. Remember that the Imperial Knights I mentioned earlier? They've been all throughout the campaign, but this is their homeworld now. So Be'lakor materialized on the planet, cursing the night to be haunted and giving everybody nightmares. I'm not making this shit up. That is in the lexiconum. He's literally just the Oogie Boogie Man from Nightmare Before Christmas. It's fucking hilarious, not gonna lie. Alright, now where was I? And as I said earlier, there was only 1/5 of the remaining Knights of House Raven actually on their planet, but they just decided to hunker down in their fortress, which, it's a fucking theme for this campaign. They just sat around and waited for help. Not sure if I'm a big fan of it. Like, I understand, but, like, come on, guys. There's 1/5 of the Knights is still a fuck ton of Knights. It's one demon. You can do it, bro. But anyways, Be'lakor did, like I said, was affecting Knights. However, the one place he couldn't affect the Knight of was the main keep. So all of the civilians in the nearby area were kind of rushed into this main keep, like I was saying. So they could get a good night's sleep and all that. Fucking childhood villain. Goddamn Be'lakor, bro. But as I was saying, However, help did actually arrive in the form of the Sisters of Battle, who landed to meet their nightly companions outside the city. However, the nightmares and spooky ooky ghosts summoned by Be'lakor managed to corrupt some of the tech priests, who in turn corrupted the knights, and as you can imagine, this led to a fight between House Raven and the Sisters, where Be'lakor unleashed more darkness, which drive the refugees in the fortress mad and using anybody with any psychic potential into gateways for demons, which, a fuck ton of people going insane and rioting and demons being spawned inside of your main keep. The fortress did in fact fall within fucking hours. And with this major victory for Chaos, the losses would only compound as the Indomitus Crusade rolled into town, which you'd think would be a good thing, but no. Sending the Sisters of Battle, Space Marines, some Imperial Guard, and some more Knights to the Obolus, the Lap, and the Lyrac systems, where fleeing Imperial forces and Chaos Pirates were both massacred alike, and with the Sisters of Battle and Knights being sent to the Duralim system with a focus on Alexistor, while the Ultramarines did actually secure a rare W when one of their lieutenants named Agalpus. I'm sorry, I haven't said that out loud until now. I thought it would sound a lot better. But Agalpus initially stood against the order to kill the loyal forces of Byzantius, before bitching out and submitting to the Inquisitor, who signed the slaughter order. Alright, now raise hands, both hands, if you remember Lord Zed. I am not raising my hands. I do not have my hands raised. But he did manage to remerge from wherever the fuck he went after that assault on the fucking whatever planet he was on, Sustus? Anyways, but he came back and he assaulted Feor, one of the Metallican gates, you can remember. And due to his admittedly incredible armored core and his accompanying demon engines, such as Helldrakes and stuff like that he had a lot of, along with the populace just generally tired of their current leadership's brutish and uncompromising ways, the planet was taken with relatively... It was taken in hours at relatively ease. It was just a very one-sided fight. It's kind of everyone just turned against the top 1%. How crazy how that works. Anyways, so for this reason, a counter-offensive was devised, consisting of Inquisitor Val, who was the one who ordered all the slaughter orders, all the culling of your own soldiers. The Iron Skulls, which is the Titans that I mentioned earlier, they've been fighting throughout the entire war. The Excruciators are making a surprise to return. The Mentors and the Nova Marines. I'm surprised the Mentors showed up, I'm going to be honest with you. However, despite heavy chaos, naval resistance, including those Helldrakes I was talking about, the Imperium shrugged off their 50% casualty rate, absolutely staggering, but they did manage to push forward, capturing the outskirts of the Feor system, with the Sororitas reaching in as deep as the ocean world of Fathom, where Rodigus Rainfather was first sighted, if you can remember that. Alright, so while the Imperium's forces did push to maintain the gates, and they were doing pretty good, honestly, Metallica itself was still under heavy assault from Typhus's forces being deployed to the ground, now that he, got rid of all the, orbital guns. He ran into more orbital guns, there was more heavy resistance from surface-to-air defenses, along with the garrison's Skitarii, and Sons of Medusa making a return! Goated Iron Hands, one Iron Hand fan, rise. Anyways, Sorry, I got some energy. But the opening battles were mostly just delaying actions by Chaos, oriented towards disrupting the admittedly very well cohesive and cooperative defenses of the Imperium, and just general, Nurgle shit, tainting Metallica, stuff like that. So despite many of these pivotal position strategic victories on the ground, Typhus was slowly losing the space fight as a plague ship was downed and the Sword's power was soon to fail. If you can remember that thing. So Typhus just kind of threw everything he had into the main industrial complex of Metallica, trying to implement his Nemesis Worm, which despite many losses, including the leader of the Chaos Titans, those, I don't even remember their name. I think it's like the Legio Morbidus, but they've been here for the entire time. Typhus did manage to advance to Clang's command room and deploy the Nemesis Worm. Now, despite the Death Guard's deplorable 80% casualty rate, the final victory Typhus was looking for was, seen through, which led to his forces retreating back into the Sword, what little forces he had, and the Nemesis Worm being easily purged but self-replicating, leaving Forge World Metallica into an eternal loop of purging its systems every 7 days. On top of this, many planets were outright lost due to the Plague Father's corruption, along with many refugees being displaced from several planets, although it is worth mentioning that Lord Zed was finally killed as the planet. I think he actually escaped. Yeah, this dude fucked off twice. But yeah. Where was I? Yeah, basically just everything was technically recaptured, but so many planets were lost to Nurgle corruption. So, overall, a Nurgle W, very common. But yeah, that's about it as far as the campaign goes for good old-fashioned... What are we looking at here? Charadon Campaign. Admittedly, I did gloss over some details, like I'm just now realizing I forgot to mention that Disciples actually did show up over Colossi, which is one of the planets that was lost. They made special mention of that, but they showed up over Colossi, but just got their ass handed to them, and that's the last time they're mentioned. So I can only assume they're destroyed. But yeah, I did gloss over some things. So if you're interested in it, please just go to the Lexicon and read it yourself. But if if you're just more of an audio guy, just having this on the background or something, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you leave a like and all that. I hope you subscribe. But yeah, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you on the next video.